Ladies and gentlemen, we continue our conference this afternoon on the last day of the first annual Noahide Nations Conference, and we're bringing back one of our earlier speakers to talk to you about all things Noahide and Torah and Talmud and wherever else he wants to take us. And so let's bring him back up on stage again. This is Rabbi Yeshayahu Hollander. Rabbi Hollander.
Okay. No, I got to be able to show and indicate. I'll be walking around. Is that right?
Pardon?
But I got this, I've got this.
You got everything?
And I want to be able to see what other people are seeing, so.
Jason, follow him.
Oh, okay, I'll try. No, I can't promise. I can't promise. Everybody, please take 5 deep breaths. Because you're going to need all the blood in your mind that you can, in your brain, so that the mind works properly. What I am going to do is learn Psalm 19. Very few people have heard this interpretation. I'm following in my mother's footsteps, who taught me how to learn Psalms. She wrote an article on Psalm 23, and I think this will help you in your learning. And that's the purpose, to help you. Before I begin, a word to our sponsor. Rabbi Nechanyahu ben Akana was accustomed to utter a short prayer before entering to learn and after leaving. His friend asked him, "What is this prayer you are saying?" He said, "When I enter, I pray that I cause no mishap. And when I leave, I give thanks for my occupation." What is said? "May it please you, O my God, that I shall not make a mistake in judgment, nor shall I fail to make the correct decision. And may my friends have pleasure from me, and may my friends also not make mistakes, and may I have pleasure from them." Bezrat HaShem, you will listen to us. Now, before we begin, I'm warning you. Learning Psalms there's a contradiction in words, practically, between learning and Psalms. Psalms is something of the heart, and when we learn, we use our brain. And very often, this can cause conflict, and the brain gets in the way of the heart. So that's why we're learning. Now, Aaron Copland said something like that. You know, Aaron Copland was one of the 20th century important composers, and he said he can't go to a concert and enjoy it because his mind is always interfering with his enjoyment. Rabbi Soloveitchik also wrote that, Rabbi Yoshe Soloveitchik also wrote about the problem between the mind and the heart. He has 2 books. One is Isha Halacha, the man of the mind, and the other, Isha Emunah, the man of the heart. It is quite, both of these books should be read. I brought this verse from Ezekiel because what happens is when you learn and you learn and then you relate to you, then you say when you say the psalm, when you, not as learning, but as a prayer, it will, what you have learned will come back and forth into your mind, and hopefully it won't interfere with your heart. Were thy Torah not my delight, I should have perished in my weakness. If the Torah were not my delight, I should have perished in my weakness. It is my delight when I learn, and if I have learned properly and internalized, it will not interfere with my prayer. This is the structure of the psalm in Hebrew, the original. You see it has it has these first 3 stanzas, 3 lines, 3 verses, and then it has different structure for the next 3. These have the same structure, then these, again a different structure, and the last line. I will not read it in Hebrew, though I would like to, but I think it will take too long and it won't talk to you. Instead, I have 2 translations in English. I don't know if you read both of them, you read both of them. Okay, I'll read one. I will start. Look at the difference, besides in the difference of front. The heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Listen, here it says skies, here it says firmament. What is it? Is it skies or firmament? What is firmament anyway? Does anybody know what firmament is? What is firmament?
It's the line across the top of the sky where they thought was the end of what we could see and the beginning of the heavens.
And why is it called firm?
I guess they thought there was a real line there.
Maybe. I don't know why it's called firm. I'll talk about that more later. I'm just showing you, this is the New International Version, and this is the King James Version. I don't think either of them are Jewish. They're not Jewish versions of the translations. Doesn't matter. Day after day they pour forth speech, uttereth. Well, pour forth, uttereth. Why should there be a difference? Because of the Hebrew root. The Hebrew root there is yabia. Yabia is like is to pour or to like a fountain flows. So the word there, the root is yabia, and here we have uttereth or pour forth. Pour forth is more literal, and night after night, display knowledge, showeth knowledge, same thing. There is no speech or language where the voice is not heard. That's same thing. Voice goes out into all the earth. Good. And the words, the end of the world. And then he has, in them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun. In the heavens hath he pitched a tent. Well, okay, the tabernacle in the midbar, in the wilderness, was some kind of a tent. Interesting, though, that this one translated it as something holy, and he translated something not holy. Okay. And then, which is like a bridegroom coming forth from his pavilion, like a champion, rejoicing to run his course. It rises at one end of the heavens and makes its circuit to the other, and nothing is hidden from its seat. That's the one. The other one is pretty much the same. Well, we'll skip this for the time being. We'll get back to it. But you don't get the structure from the English. We'll start at the beginning. HaShamayim mesaprim kvod kel. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day after day they pour forth speech, which is statement, and night they showeth knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard, exactly the same. These are the difference in the first 3 verses and the first 6. Well, we'll go read the first 3 and then the other 3. The skies proclaim, or the firmament showeth. Day after day, day unto day. What's the difference? Day after day. There's no connection between the days. The day doesn't speak to the day. Day unto day is from one to the other, whether it's one to the other or one connects to the other. Pour forth or uttereth, display knowledge or showeth knowledge, voice, oh dear, voice and line. What's the connection between voice and line? Besides telephone line? Not really, no. At then tabernacle, it rises, is going forth. Okay. So you see, when you take a couple of translations, you come across discrepancies and differences which say, here's something that I should go into deeper. Here's something which is called, so I look at the stone and I take out another translation, take out another translation, and I say, oh, well, can I figure out what it should mean? Maybe I can see from the Hebrew. If I know a little bit of Hebrew, I can try to see the root in an English-Hebrew dictionary, and I may get somewhere and I may get nowhere. So you may have to ask somebody, but anyway, it teaches you, when you compare translations, you can see, here's a point that should be investigated. You shouldn't read only one translation. Does anybody here know 2 languages well? Besides me. Well, if anybody tried to, you know. Well, what do you say about translating? Can you translate?
No, you can't.
Pardon?
No.
Really. Not really. You cannot really translate anything, because any translation is an interpretation of one aspect of the meanings of the poet. Especially in poetry, you cannot translate. You can translate, you can have the same person can translate the same verse different ways, and could publish 3 different translations of the same psalm, and they would be somewhat enough different that you would, when you read the second one, you'd say, is this the same or is this something else? When you read the original language, whether it's Hebrew, whatever the original language happened to be, a person who lives in that language will get the harmony and get all the things together, and that is difficult to do. But at least by using different translations, you can come across a problem, something which you want to go into further in your learning of that. Now, the word is firmament is rakia in Hebrew, and that's what the translation of the Hebrew word rakia. Hashamayim and Mesaprim is the heavens. They tell. Hashamayim and Mesaprim Kodel. They tell the glory of God. Hashamayim and Mesaprim Kodel Umasei Adav, and the work of his hands are told by the rakia. Well, Abarbanel, you know who Abarbanel is? Does anybody know who Abarbanel is? Abarbanel was the Minister of Finance of King Ferdinand, who chased the Jews out of Spain, and he left also. And after he was also a great Torah scholar, and he published a few books. Among them is an interpretation of the Bible, of the Torah. And he brought on the word rakia, or firmament, or whatever. Let's stick with rakia. 5 understandings: an upper sphere, all the heavenly entities, the curved part of the sphere of the moon, a special sphere in the center of the universe, a special first-day sphere from which all the spheres derived, and that sphere didn't exist anymore. That's the 5. And the Malbim says, no. That's all very archaic archaeology, and it has nothing to do with reality. We know that these spheres don't exist, and the poet King David could not have meant things which don't exist. So we must try to interpret it from things that do exist, and we know there's such a thing called the atmosphere. And so the Malbim says, the Malbim was a rabbi who lived in the late 19th century. He was a Polish Jew, and he went down to Romania, and he was I think the only Romanian of importance in recent Jewish history as a Torah luminary. And he said, so that's what he said. That part of the atmosphere involved in rain and storms. That is the rakia. Why should you get so involved in such a thing? Because you have in the beginning of Genesis, you have Yehi rakia b'toch hamayim v'hi mavdil bein mayim l'mayim. You have this rakia between the waters, if you remember the beginning of Genesis, and it should separate between one water and the other water. So this is probably where the word firmament comes from. This is the land that separates the waters. There are 2 waters. There's water on land and there's subterranean water. Maybe that's what he's talking about, and that is probably what the people who translated rakia into firmament, that's probably what they were thinking. What they mean by firmament, they mean the firm land we walk on and build on. That may be. It's just interesting. Now, let's think about what the Malbim said. What is the difference between the Malbim and the Abarbanel? Well, when the Malbim says we should ignore what Abarbanel is saying, he says we know better, we know what's going on, and we should try to interpret the verses of the Tanakh according to our present knowledge. Ignore what the elders said, ignore what the Jews said 100 years ago, 500 years ago. Let's think from ab initio. That is making a very interesting assumption. That is making an assumption that King David knew nature as we know it. An amazing assumption. I don't know why it's any better than to think that he thought the way Abarbanel thought. Abarbanel was a lot closer to King David than we were. He was 500 years closer. So what did King David really think? Well, there are two possibilities involved with this. Either we can figure it out or we cannot. If we cannot, we're left to our own devices. But perhaps we can. Perhaps we can. In this particular case, I'm not saying that we can always do that, but in this particular case, we may be able to do some intellectual archaeology from this verse, from this chapter of Psalms. We have the verse 4. B'chol ha'aretz yatsa kavam, u'b'ktzei tevel milehem, l'shemesh sam ohel bahem. Their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. In the heavens he has pitched a tent for the sun. Their line or their voice. Why should anybody think it's a voice? Why should anybody think it's a line? Well, it's simple. And of course it's a line because the word kav is line. Not necessarily a straight line. For instance, I didn't bring it, but I saw on Shabbat in the translation, in the Siddur of Chabad, it's called an arc. Not a line, they translate, instead of line, they translate this, their arc has gone out through all the earth. And their words to the end of the world, and then they said tabernacle for the sun. Which voice? If you say it's a voice, we have a problem. It said before, Ein omer ve'ein karim, there is no speech, there is no voice. When we say that the heavens tell, that's a metaphor. The heavens don't say anything. We understand, when we look at the heavens, we understand things. That's us acting. We are acting. The heaven isn't saying a thing. Hashamayim asarvim korel. It's not literal, it's metaphorical. Okay? So, and then he says, in the previous verse he says, there is no speech. Ein omer ve'ein varim. Where is it? Here. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard or their voice is not heard. If there is no speech, so of course we don't hear what there isn't. But we understand it from ourselves and we call it Hashamayim Saprim. The heavens tell us, in other words, we put it into their mouths, but they aren't saying anything, they're just there, the way God created them. And so that's verse 3. And verse 4, we talk about their words, their voice. Well, so that doesn't work too well. The other one, the line, has gone out through all the earth. What is their line? Does anybody get up in the morning early, very early, and watch the sunrise? Okay? And does anybody here watch the sunset? Can you tell something about what happens during the year, the yearly cycle? Yes, what?
It starts over here on my deck, and at the end of the season, it's over here.
Right. In the summer, in the northern hemisphere, in the summer, the sun rises in the northeast and goes southward and finishes its cycle in the northwest and then sets. When the sun sets, the conception is, the way we describe it, is the sun goes under the horizon, or the sun goes under the earth. The line goes like this and comes like this and goes back around the earth on the other side. And in the summer, it starts in the south and goes up high and comes down and around the earth. What happens is you have a series of curves that the sun makes in its journey in the skies. Has anybody enjoyed a tent in a hot summer's day? Lying on his back and say, well, thank God there's a tent here. And I don't have to worry, not about getting skin cancer, and I can take a break from the hot sun. Has anybody done that? And kept his eyes open and looked through the tent, and what do you see? Out of the tent, you see spots of light. And it depends on the weave of the material of the tent, what exactly you see. An old weave is not as tight as the weaves we make today. Look up here. Look at the chandelier. See a bunch of lines? The lines make an envelope, its mathematic term is an envelope of lines. They make a surface. The lines create a surface. we have this idea in another place. In the Hebrew it says again, and it says in Yeshayahu, and so the word of the Lord is unto them, precept by precept, precept by precept, line by line, line by line. Here a little, there a little. The end of the verse is not important for our purposes. What they're saying is that the Almighty, with all His regulations, is making straitjacket. He's binding us, line by line, like Lilliput. In Lilliput, they bound him line by line. And I don't know how to answer that anyway. I don't know where it is. So that, I think, is the word. The lines there are the lines that the sun draws in the sky during the, where's the, this is it. That is the word kav. V'chol ha'aretz yatsa kavam, all their arcs cover the earth. V'ksei tevel milehem. This is a very, again, we say at the end, in the normal translation, is their words. Their words reach the end of the world, but we said before they have no words. They're not talking. We're putting things into their mouth. What is this milehem? You know the word brit milah? Circumcision? Do you know what is actually done in circumcision? Well, you draw with your finger. Circumcision is literally cutting around. Incision is a cut, and circumference you cut around. You cut the foreskin around the penis. But what you may not know is that in young boys there is another membrane between the foreskin and the flesh of the penis, and that is, I don't know what it's called in English, but we have a halacha that after cutting the foreskin, we have to peel back that membrane.
It's called the mucosa.
Huh?
It's called the mucosa.
Mucosa? Okay, mucosa. So you have to peel back the mucosa. You can cut it, but it's enough to peel it back. You don't have to cut it. It's very delicate anyway. You can tear it with your fingernail. Okay, that's why is it called Brit Milah? It's not a word. Milah is a word in Hebrew, but it's nothing to do with a word. It's strange expression, Brit Milah, for something that has nothing to do with a word. Some people say, well, obviously Milah is to cut, but there's no source for such an interpretation besides this expression. We have this in the morning. Some people know something about agriculture here, about farming, about wheat. Anybody know something about wheat? How do you determine when the wheat is ready to be cut? Yes, you do like this, like this, like this, or like this. What do you call this? What do you call this?
Threshing.
What?
Threshing.
That's not threshing. Threshing is what you do on the floor.
Drosh.
Well, what do you do when you take a few grains and go like this?
Drosh.
Well, we don't. What?
Drosh.
Drash?
Drosh.
Yes? Okay. Like the Hebrew drash?
Yes.
Okay. Well, okay. So it's drash. What you actually do is you take a couple of grains of wheat and you do like this, and what happens is that either the outside klipa, the outside covering, either falls off, falls into pieces, breaks off, and then you know the wheat is dry and ready to be cut, or it's not. Or what happens is it's still wet, and you feel it. So when you crumble it. You crumble it, and it's so. What you're doing is, if you look at it with greater detail, you see that you're folding it and see if it breaks. You fold it until it breaks. Or you fold it and it doesn't break. If it doesn't break, it's still not ready to be cut. In the Hebrew it says, "Boboker yatzitz v'chalaf le'erev yimolel v'yavesh." The same root of milah. There's another place. I don't know whether I brought it here. No. Okay, there's another place which the other rabbi will say, where do you do Malika?
Malika is, I don't understand where, what you do it in the temple.
Yes. What Malika is when instead of an animal sacrifice, we bring a bird, a pigeon. And the slaughtering is not done with a knife. It's done with the right thumbnail. That's where we do it. What do we do with the right thumbnail? Where do we place it on the bird when we do that, to kill the bird?
The back of the spine.
On the back of the spine, here. Here, and the term is?
Malika.
Yes, and what is it said in the Torah? Mul or po.
Mul or po.
Mul or po.
Opposite.
Opposite, but it's not opposite. The opposite of the oref, the opposite of this, is this. And we don't do it here. We do it not mul or po. We do it mul or po in the sense mol or po, in the place where the neck bends. And I think that Yimolel is when we bend it. Mol or po is where the neck bends. And Miktzei tevel milehem is where the lines bend. So what we have is, we have the lines of the sun every day, and another line, one next to the other, one after the other, like these lines here, one after the other, one close to the other, and nearly parallel, not exactly parallel. And they start at the sun on the eastern side, they rise, and they go down, and in effect they create a covering for at least the southern half of the sky. This covering is the tent. The tent. You see here it says tent oil. HaShem has some oil by heaven. The envelope of lines. Their line has gone out through all the earth. Their words, not the words we say, but the words. Instead of words, we say that the lines get to the end of the world and fold under it and come up on the other side, and in the end they're making a tent. The tent, an envelope of lines, an envelope, a tent which the sun lives in. From the summer to the winter and back and forth, he goes back and forth, north and south. I mean, from the zenith down to, that depends on what latitude you live on, how far down it goes in the winter. But the winter, in the winter the sun is down, and in the summer it's on top. That is the interpretation of that. That seems to be King David's astronomy, not the spheres of Aranel, not the atmosphere, not our atmosphere, but he seems to be describing the way that he, as a shepherd, observed the skies day after day after day and saw the difference from one day to another. This is a little imagination. I'm not forcing anybody to accept it, but it's a novel interpretation, and I hope when you learn things, you use your imagination, and you may come up with some more interesting archaeological findings. So the lines followed by the heavenly body cover the whole earth, bending under the edge of the word, and the sun is bound by the envelope created by these lines. This is mathematical term envelope, which some of you may remember from high school. So this is the astronomy of King David. A series of lines create an envelope of lines, which is a locus, if you remember that term from high school, of all the points on the lines, and this is called the tent. Well, the sun now, how does it travel? It comes out like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoice the strong man and mate. I have nothing to add to this, whether the translations are more or less the same, whether it's a chamber or a pavilion. I don't know the difference. Does anybody know the difference between a chamber is built and a pavilion can be described as some part of a tent? So in that sense, if we are talking about tents, then this newer translation would be a little better. It rises at one end, makes its circuit to the other, and nothing is hidden from the seat, even in the tent in the summer. Now, we'll read the verses 1 to 6. What is the answers on verse 1 to 6? I quote at the end here Maimonides. Maimonides says, why do we talk about the sky at all? How are we hearing the words that it doesn't say? What is the way to love and fear God? Maimonides says, whenever one contemplates the great wonders of God's works and creations, and one sees that they are a product of wisdom that has no bounds or limits, one will immediately love, laud, and glorify God with an immense passion to know the great name, like David has said, my soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When one thinks about these matters, one will feel a great fear and trepidation. This is a translation from the Hebrew, of course, which is yirah, which I don't think is, I think it is also more awe than fear. I think it's more awe than fear. And one will know that one is a low and insignificant creation, with hardly an iota of intelligence compared to that of God. Like David said, when I observe your heavens, the work of your fingers, what is man that you are heedful of him? Bearing these things in mind, I shall explain, the Rambam says, important concepts of the Creator's work as a guide to understanding and loving God. Concerning this love, the sages said that from it will come to know God. This is in Chot Yesodei Torah 2:2, and in the 3rd chapter, the Rambam goes on explaining, and nobody really reads what he's written in there because he's describing the spheres again, and we're not interested in medieval cosmogony. So I don't know how many people bother reading these chapters, and Rambam describes the science of his day. Okay, good for you. Now, all of a sudden, with no connection, no apparent connection to what was said before, King David begins talking about the Torah. Until now, he's talking about the heavens, and clearly, this is a different thing. The law of Hashem is perfect, reviving the soul. He's talking about the Torah. The statutes of Hashem are trustworthy, making wise the simple. Oh, same translation, both of them. The precepts or statutes of Hashem are right, giving joy to the heart. The commands of Hashem are radiant, giving light to the eyes. The fear of Hashem is pure, enduring forever. The ordinance, all about the Torah. They are more precious than gold, much pure gold. Okay, they're sweeter than honey from the comb. Oh, now we get to something new again. Now we get to the resultant for us. Not only is it all very sweet, but we are warned by them, and we are rewarded. And then, stopping the description, we talk about ourselves. Forgive my hidden faults. Who can keep one from making errors? Forgive our hidden faults. Forgive my hidden faults. Cleanse thou me from secret faults. Keep your servant also from willful sins, that they may not rule over me. Then I will be blameless, innocent transgression, and in the end, summing up, that what I have said, Hashem should please accept what I have said. Why did he make the jump all of a sudden from talking about the skies and astronomy and the way we see the heavens and how we can derive our belief from them in God? He jumps all of a sudden to the Torah. Why isn't it in a different psalm? There is a Psalm 119 is a psalm all about the Torah. He could have just taken these verses and added, and instead of it being so and so many verses, how much? 8 times 22 verses. He could have added it, put another, if you want to have it 8 times 22, so you could have another one next to it. It would have been Psalm 120. Yes, what do you suggest?
Actually, my suggestion is the first 6 verses are universal. That you have this great universe in which we live in, that everyone can learn the fear of Hashem. In fact, it says in verse 6 that no one is without excuse, knowing that there is a Creator. But to know Hashem, because the creation part is the Elohim part.
Oh my God, no, let me see the Hebrew again, okay? Okay, Torah Hashem. Okay, the beginning is El, Shemaya 7 Prod El, and this is Torah Hashem. Right, okay. So why does he skip from one to the other again?
Because he's going from, you can know so much, or at least you can learn so much from creation about the Creator. But then there's a different level of learning. And that only comes from the Torah. So you have to make that transition.
Okay, fine. Go a little further with that. By them your servant also careful. Right? What verse is this? Here it's, by them is your servant warned, or careful. In another translation, there's great reward. Here it says this. Here, also. Keep your servant also. Also. The also here, I think, is part of it. Part of it is the also. Like the heavens, like the heavenly bodies. Heavenly bodies do what God tells them exactly. They don't move from what He tells them 1 inch. Your servant is, we also should do it exactly as God has said. Your servant is also careful, also on top of them, to adhere to your instructions like the Son does. The Son follows each day in His life, so does your servant also carefully follow your instructions, which are the Torah and the commandments. That they have the heavenly bodies have no alternative. They can't make mistakes. They can't deviate. We can. And so we have to say, well, we learn from them and we're like them. They're servants of the Almighty, and so are we. But we have free choice, and we have to choose. The Son doesn't have to choose. We have to choose. We're not automats. We're human beings. We can make mistakes. So God has given us the Torah to direct us. And then we want to get direction from Torah, so we ask the rabbis, and they say we don't know what they argue, or they dispute among themselves. Okay, so we say, Hashem, please take into consideration that we're not automats, and we do the best we can, and keep us from mistakes. The heavens without volition, because the law of the Hashem is terfes. Now here, another thing I want to say, the fear of Hashem is pure, enduring forever. The ordinance of Hashem are sure and altogether righteous. And here you have the other one, the fear of Hashem is clean, pure, clean, enduring forever. The ordinance or judgments, it's different, quite different. Ordinances from judgments of Hashem are true, are sure, and righteous altogether, or altogether righteous. It sounds a little different. Altogether righteous, what does that mean? Altogether righteous.
Only righteous.
100% righteous. What is righteous altogether?
A lot of things are righteous.
What?
A lot of things are righteous.
Altogether, they are righteous. Altogether, they're righteous, not individually. You can't take part of the Torah without the rest of the Torah in learning and understanding. Now, if you see in verse 9, it says all together. It said this parasha, after Korach and his people, where some of them went down into the pit, and then you had fire came forth from Hashem, devoured the 250 men that offered the incense. They were not buried in the pit as were Korach and his fellows. They were burnt. 250 people were burnt, and others were swallowed up into the earth. Okay? We remember the sons of Aaron. They also brought incense, and they were also burnt. It's very interesting that the verse says here, but the fire therein, just like they did the people of Korach, and they offered strange fire before Hashem, which He had not commanded them. Rashi there brings a couple of suggestions what the sin of the sons of Aaron were. And one of them doesn't seem to be why he brings this idea, this strange idea that they were saying, they were teaching in place of their superiors. They were teaching Torah. And another explanation is that they said, when these two old geezers die, and let us come in their place. Okay, it's nowhere suggested anywhere. The third one that Rashi brings is that they had had some alcoholic wine or alcoholic beverage before going there, and they were coming inebriated. Is that the way it's said? Inebriated into the Mishkan, into the tabernacle, and that is mentioned after this parasha is finished. The Torah says you should not come into the tabernacle after having had alcoholic drink. So the last thing we can understand from the context, but the other two, where does it come from? I think it comes from here, that we associate Nadav and Avihu to the Korach. They were punished the same way. Apparently they had the same sin. What was the same sin? Of rebelling against your elders and betters.
Haughtiness.
And so, what?
Haughtiness?
Pardon?
Haughtiness? Haughtiness.
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 Haughtiness, okay. So that's where we got this interpretation. Now, a very nice interpretation I have is that, what was the sin? The sin was that they brought the Ketores. And it says, Asher lo tzivam, which they hadn't been ordered to do. They were doing what they thought was a mitzvah. They thought was, well, it is a mitzvah. And they wanted to do it also. But they weren't instructed to do it, and they were doing it in the holy place. In the holy place, you can't do what you want. There's protocol. There's what you have to do and what you may not do. And they were taking liberty of deciding what they can do in the holy things. Now it says, actually, they were going beyond themselves. They were wholly devoted to HaShem. They wanted to be close to HaShem. Well, they were. They got so close to HaShem that their souls departed their bodies, and their souls went to HaShem, and their bodies, and left their bodies. They died not as a punishment. They died as a result of their coming very close to HaShem. Why doesn't it happen every time? Every time a person would go to the temple, go to the tabernacle, and every Kohen would bring this Ketores, he should, if he's doing his business properly, he should die, shouldn't he? Well, what do you say?
Because they don't die because the priest, the Kohen Gadol, does it in proper order. He follows instructions.
Right, because it says, the law of HaShem is perfect, reviving the soul. The soul naturally would go out to HaShem, would leave our body. If it isn't according to the Torah, we stand in danger of our soul departing, going to the ultimate place where the souls do go. But if it's according to the Torah, the law of Hashem is perfect, reviving the soul. That is the interpretation of another interpretation of what the sons of Aaron, what happened to them. They did it not according to the Torah, Asher lo tziva Hashem, and there's nothing to revive their soul. There was nothing to revive them. So their soul left their bodies and stayed where it should be, a wonderful place, but their bodies weren't there anymore. And Aaron was pretty sad that day. It started to be one of the most wonderful days of his life, the Midrash says, and then what happened? So the ordinance of Hashem are sure and altogether righteous, or righteous altogether they are righteous. And if you miss some of the points, you're likely to get into a lot of trouble. This is particularly, so the Torah is a complete user manual. And part of it is not enough. These verses were mentioned before. Now what I'm saying is, again, I actually planned to bring this the first day, the first talk, and to bring what I said about the Sisers on the second day. This is the basis for it. To be able to make new halakha, to decide basic new questions, you cannot learn a particular section of the Torah. You have to know all of it. That is why a normal rabbi will not make a new decision. If it's very close analogy, he will stick his neck out of it. If it's any more than that, he will go to a person who really knows everything. We'll go to my cousin, who knows everything. There are people like that. No, he does. He knows everything. Everything. When he was 18, his father said, I want you to do a matriculation examination. Finish high school. Pass the, what is it after high school here? Regents exams in New York. We have examinations to finishing high school. Well, my cousin didn't want to. He wanted to learn Torah. So my uncle insisted, my cousin resisted. Well, how do you resolve a problem like that? You go to the Rav. So he went to the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the Yeshiva, Rav Kahanaman Zatzal, and Rav Kahanaman said to my cousin, you do what your father says. So he says, okay. The Rav said, I've got to do what my father said, I have to pass the exams. So, his father cooperated and got him a private teacher for physics. That was only for physics. All the rest he learned himself. And in half a year he passed with marks between 95 and 100. In a half a year he learned all that you learn in 4 years of high school. Well, I think other people could do that too. You don't have to be such a genius as he is. But he has also a photographic memory. I mentioned that at the age of 3, he taught himself to read, and he began reading books of halakha at the age of 3. So you have people like that. They're unique, but they are the people who know, and they're the people you have to go to with the difficult questions. What I hope for the development of Noahide halakha is that we can set up in Jerusalem a Beit Midrash of very good students, very knowledgeable people who will work together and then bring the questions after having elaborated all the questions, understanding the questions. They will go to the great decisors who will make the decisions. You have to prepare the case, and these people should also be people who are conversant with B'nai Noach. They should be here for a while. They should meet here, or certainly here, and see what happens in the communities. You cannot make halakha without knowing the reality. As a result of this work, we will be able to have schools for Noahide rabbis who will be able to learn what has been decided by the great decisors when in interaction with the people who need these rules and who press to get them. So this is a direction. So all I'm saying now is I said is Hilchata Mashiach, or I hope perhaps sooner. And I was hoping to give you a little pointer about learning, that you should learn from more than one translation. The stone is very good, but it is not enough. It's not enough, and if you find something that is not satisfying, take another translation, find where the discrepancies are, and then try to find an answer on your own, using your imagination, using your knowledge, or ask somebody who knows a lot more Hebrew than you do. Thank you. It has been a pleasure to learn, and I'm very happy to have been here. Oh, wait a minute. What is it that went out? I'm very happy to have been here. It's a great experience for me, and I hope that I've been a benefit to you. Shalom Aleichem.